US President Joe Biden has vowed consequences for Saudi Arabia after last week's decision announced by the OPEC Plus group, led by Riyadh, that it would cut oil production despite Washington's strong objections.
OPEC made the decision to align their energy policy with Russia's war aims and against the American people, further underscores that reasoning to realign that relationship, to reevaluate that relationship with Saudi Arabia. We are reviewing where we are currently right now, and we'll be watching closely over the coming weeks and months as well, consulting with our allies and also with with members of Congress.
National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said that Biden believes it's time to take another look at the relationship and make sure that it is serving our national security interests. The development comes a day after Senator Bob Menendez said that the US must immediately freeze all aspects of US cooperation with Saudi Arabia, including the sale of arms. On Tuesday, Senator Richard Blumenthal and California Representative Ro Khanna also introduced legislation that would immediately pause all US arms sales to Saudi Arabia for 1 year. This would also halt sales of spare and repair parts, support services and logistical support. For the last few weeks, US officials had been quietly trying to persuade its biggest Arab partner to nix the idea of a production cut. But Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has not been swayed. But it remains to be seen how far Biden is willing to go in showing his displeasure with the Saudis. Over a year ago, Biden came into office vowing to reassess the US relationship because of Saudi Arabia's human rights record. But a tough oil market seemingly forced him to pay a visit to the kingdom earlier this year. Well, for more on this, we're joined by our correspondent Susan Tarani, who's live in New York for us. Well, Susan, since tough talk from the Biden administration has been swirling around for the last couple of days, but all of this, is it likely to lead to any concrete action?
Yeah, you know, Nick, many analysts believe that while this really was a setback and humiliation for the Biden administration, the president himself, because he took that trip back in July to Saudi Arabia, and while he doesn't admit that it was for oil and he says it was for the betterment of relationships between Arab allies in the region, it was for oil. And the Saudis went ahead with what was to their best interest. And here we are right now. And despite all of this, we are in a midterm cycle. And so some believe that a lot of this is performative. It was an embarrassment for the Biden administration. But ultimately, the measures that the Democrats are putting forth is very unlikely to have bipartisan support on Capitol Hill. And what they're doing right now is they're putting these measures forward on the one hand to say that well, they have to do something about something, but on the other hand to take the attention away on the fact that America could be energy independent if they open up energy refineries and the oil market here in the United States. America doesn't have to be dependent on Saudi oil or OPEC. OPEC worked to their own interests, and America can work to its own interests as well. So, you know, that's the discussion that's happening here on this side. But to go ahead and really pull out U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia, weapons and defense capabilities, you know, these are allies alliances that have been going on for decades, almost 70 years, and it's very unlikely that something like that would happen. And also, you know, they've managed to really hit hurdles and bypass them time and again. And I think oil prices, and it's not just me, a lot of others believe that oil prices aren't going to be something that would really, you know, merit these kind of changes. President Biden said that there will be some kind of change in policy, but it's very unlikely that it's going to be very drastic.
And Susan, we heard a moment ago about those legislation proposals to stop arms sales being announced by some lawmakers. How much support do such initiatives have at the moment? How much support are they likely to garner?
They do have support among the Democrats. On the one hand, there is that kind of Democratic push because of President Biden's pariah state announcement from the very beginning of his administration. And then you have the human rights aspect of Saudi Arabia. And then you have this OPEC announcement. Remember, it's not just the president, it's the Democratic Party in the midterm elections and gas prices here in the United States that really will ultimately have a hit because of this announcement, partially, at least partially, on the one hand. But, Republicans aren't going to go along with this because ultimately, as I mentioned, there are other aspects and other avenues that America can really save itself. And it doesn't have to be reliant on OPEC. And I think that's the argument that many of them are going to bring to the table, as they have in recent days.